forgive me one last question, Scott. The biggest enchilada of them all, though all of those have been big ones. What on earth is happening with the American administration in Ukraine? Little Zelensky said today that he just had his best ever call with Donald Trump. Yet the day before, Trump and Putin seemed to get on famously in another very long phone call. How do you make sense of what the Americans are doing or see as their goal in the Ukraine conflict?
You know, earlier we talked about Elon Musk and how he was a stickler for veracity, for truth. What we're seeing at play here is the byproduct of an administration that stands for nothing whatsoever. And what we're also seeing is that President Trump cannot get the better of President Putin. That President Putin is a very sage man, a very wise man who will not yield at all. He doesn't give President Trump any leverage at all on the issue of Ukraine. He is just straightforward. These are our demands. This is what we're going to do. And Trump can't take him off that stance. But Trump also understands that there has to be better relations with Russia. So he is capable of pursuing better relations. And yet on Ukraine, he doesn't know how to admit defeat. See, Donald Trump is incapable. He's such a narcissist, such an egomaniac, that it's impossible for him to say, yeah, we need to cut our losses. I mean, who among us hasn't at some point in time in their life gotten deep into a problem or something and said, this ain't going right. This is wrong. We got to cut. We got to go. We got to reset. Donald Trump can't do that because his ego won't let him. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to use words to salve the wounds of Zelensky. We're going to use words to salve the wounds of our NATO allies, but we can't back it up with anything. The president is promising Patriot missile batteries and Patriot missiles that don't exist, that we don't have to deliver. He's making promises to Europe of American support if Europe bankrupts itself by committing to a 5% GDP increase of their defense spending, not recognizing, and I don't think many people do, that 2.5% GDP defense sometimes is the equivalent of the entire government budget of some of these nations. And to go to 5 means that that's all you're spending your money on. A GDP is not a reflection of the budget. It's a reflection of the gross domestic product. Trump we're in for a very ugly period because it's only going to get worse. Just like, as you know, as a man of integrity, as you've watched politicians lie throughout their lives, and I've watched people lie throughout their lives, you just dig the hole deeper. Your lies just dig the hole deeper, make the problem more difficult to solve. In the end, the only solution that's going to come from Ukraine is the Russian solution, which Putin has said will take as long as it needs to take. He's under no timeline, no political timeline. Whereas, Trump and everybody else, they are operating on political timelines. Each one of them is looking at a ticking clock of their political fate as it ticks down to their demise if they don't change something, and they don't have the courage to say we were wrong in Ukraine. And as you have pointed out over and over again, the people that are going to pay the price are the Ukrainian people, whose lives will continue to be squandered in this ridiculous game of, American hegemony, European relevance. I don't know if you saw the news. The Russians this last week, no matter how many times the Western media is going to spin lies, the Russians lost the lowest number of soldiers in the war in the last week, meaning, and they killed more Ukrainians than ever before. 156 Russians, I believe, lost their lives. That's tragic. These were numbers that broke America's back during the Vietnam War. We bringing home 200 dead boys a week, and it broke us. So it's painful for the Russians. They lost 156. They killed 1,200 and something. That's a kill ratio that can't be sustained by the Ukrainians, but it's one that the West appears to be willing to let continue so that Donald Trump's ego can be, stroked. I don't know if you saw the news. The Russians this last week, no matter how many times the Western media is going to spin lies, the Russians lost the lowest number of soldiers in the war in the last week, meaning, and they killed more Ukrainians than ever before. 156 Russians, I believe, lost their lives. That's tragic. These were numbers that broke America's back during the Vietnam War. We bringing home 200 dead boys a week, and it broke us. So it's painful for the Russians. They lost 156. They killed 1,200 and something. That's a kill ratio that can't be sustained by the Ukrainians, but it's one that the West appears to be willing to let continue so that Donald Trump's ego can be, stroked. Trump's ego can be, stroked.
As Shakira said, Scott, hips don't lie, and neither do BlackRock investors. And they have cut and run because they've discovered that BlackRock were claiming ownership rights to resources that are now and forevermore under the feet of the Russian army. So that too is a very telling inflection point, isn't it?
Absolutely. And these investors, I can't say I've worked with BlackRock, but I remember back in 1998, 1999, when I first resigned and my name was everywhere, I was brought in as a consultant by global hedge funds and global investment companies of a similar sort. And they wanted my geopolitical analysis so that they could make these kind of investment decisions. And they play to win, and they have the ability to leverage a lot of influence through money, through investments, et cetera. And, for them to walk away from an investment of the sort that they've made in Ukraine is indicative of their conclusion that this situation cannot be reversed. Because normally, they can play the long game. So they could say, okay, we're going to hold on to this for 20 years. And it'll reverse in 20 years. We'll just take the losses, whatever ledger magic they do. But for them to walk away now means that this will never change. That, as you said, it is now and forever part of Mother Russia, and there's nothing that's going to change that. And that is the biggest tell of them all.
Scott Ritter, as always, a masterpiece. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All talk shows.